It says in the book of Revelations that we'll know the end is near when we see the harlot seated on the throne. Recently, we saw Camilla and Charles, and they were seated on the throne. It was a travesty. Not because I have anything in particular against Camilla or even Charles for that matter, but Camilla, she simply shouldn't have been there. When Diana died, they told us Camilla would never be queen and never have that title. When Elizabeth was crowned, her husband Philip, he didn't become king. And on the call with a friend of mine recently who works in state government, she said, that's the way it works. Small incremental changes. They say one thing and do something else. And they think we wouldn't notice. But guess what? We did notice. Welcome. Welcome to Illinois Bridging Awareness. I'm Stanley Smith at Illinois Bridging Awareness. We've been through the awake part, and we moved on to the awareness part, and now we're bridging the gap between the us and them and the other, so that we can all come together to get out of this mess. Perhaps we weren't paying attention when the Twin Towers collapsed, or during the housing crisis, or the financial collapse, let alone the pandemic narrative, which was kind of the icing on the cake. We've all been through a journey together. We just didn't know it. This Sunday in church, the reading was about how there are many mansions in the Lord's house and how God has gone ahead of us to prepare a place for us. God is obviously way ahead of us on so many things. If we had known what was coming, we probably wouldn't have been able to bear it all. I didn't want to be a witness to the crowning of Camilla or Charles, but I did. I know the idea of Christian witness means to evangelize to others about the good news, but to me, it's always meant literally that, being a witness to the good and the bad, to see actually what is happening. This week, I was in communication with David Smith from the Illinois Family Institute, and I really asked him, I said, well, David, how can we be for something instead of always focusing on what we're against? And David explained to me that we really do need to do both. We're called to see both the good and the bad and to lift up the good and correct the bad. This is what we're called to do. And whenever we see something wrong, we need to point it out and see it. Of course, at the coronation, we saw they were saying one thing and doing an opposite thing. They said Charles's role was to lift up the good and correct the bad, but they proceeded to do the opposite. Jim Downs often offers the positive qualities words pairing to show how things can be greater than the sum of the parts when combining them with each other. This is a way to exemplify what is good, beautiful, and truthful. We don't need to be afraid of lifting up positive values because it's a values proposition. A young person told me this week that he suspects that the values of previous generations is what have sustained us and brought us into the world where we are today, for good and for bad. And the idea of jettisoning all those values seems illogical to him. We can't start from the platform of good and jettison all that got us here to accomplish something else. That's the placing something else in the place it doesn't belong, just like Camilla. It was the housing crisis. It'll be the housing crisis of morality to do so, and the financial collapse of inhumanity. Last week, we talked about the Trinity on the Saturday call, being in relationship and inviting one more. The model of the family was given along with the Holy Trinity as examples of being in partnership with one another and then inviting the other. We talked about and are talking about having strong relationships on the call. And if we can do so, then we can invite someone else. In the General Jural Assembly initiative, we're participating in such a relationship building model. And it's the goal to connect with other groups, starting with 3 people in each county of the state, and then have those people connect with 3 more people. We only need 13 people in each county to tip the scales back to sanity in our state. Illinois is well underway on this project, and other states are already on it as well. None of us have to stop being who we are or change or be different because God hears us all in our own unique way. All we need to do now is get ready. It's a wonder that we're not all crazy. All the incremental changes that have brought us to where we are, along with a few world-shattering events, it's all been traumatic. And in the process, trauma has been normalized as normal. I live in Chicago and people are killed here every day. And it's just like, oh, well, that's just the way it is here. And we also hear the colloquialisms of, well, we live in good times and bad times. But why why do we all buy into these notions? It's apparently a truth sandwich. Traditionally, the recipe for the truth sandwich was to include mostly truth with small pieces of falsehood along the way. It's been presented to me that truth sandwich probably was traditionally 97% truth and only 3% falsehood. But I think we can see that we're experiencing a new recipe for making a sandwich, and it's more and more falsehood and less truth. I have, as I've said, nothing against Camilla as a person, but it was the idea that she should not have been in that position at the coronation. Queen Elizabeth's husband, he was not presented as king when she was coronated, and there was no useful purpose for Camilla to be queen. More important, it illustrates the idea that we're pretty gullible to have fraud perpetrated on us, and we just gobble it up. The fraud is perpetrated through us because we accept it. We all have a lot invested in being a nice person and a good person. It's the saying one thing and doing that thing. But guess what? We can say and do something different. We can do something else. And that something else is we can push back. The General Jural Assembly is a way to do that. Plus, since we've been discussing relationship building, it's a great example and model of doing just that, of being in relationship. On the Saturday call, we can see that this group, along with other groups, are coming together. And the assembly is a great way. It's an excellent way to model the relationship building practice. We're reaching out to each other and then reaching out to one more. And we're doing so together. I invite you to learn more about the General Assembly and Illinois Bridging Awareness in the weekly email that goes out with resources and links. And you're also welcome to contact me. Also, you're invited to the Saturday call, which is every Saturday at 9 a.m. Central Time on Zoom. I will include my email in the description of this video. I'll be happy to send you an invitation. And I look forward to seeing you very, very soon.